The movie opens with Dennis, yes, the dog Dennis, eagerly waiting for the midnight fashion show at 12 a.m. Meanwhile, his owner, Neil, was at an awards ceremony with his crush, Catherine, trying to impress her with his big, confident words. Just then, the moment gets hilariously ruined. A dog starts barking loudly. And of course, once one dog barks, the entire neighborhood joins in. But wait, this chaos isn't real. It's all happening inside Neil's dream. In reality, Dennis was barking non-stop and had woken up the neighbors. So Neil goes to apologize to an annoyed woman next door, though secretly, he's thinking about how to impress her by showing off his stylish dog. Later that night, while out for a walk, Neil spots Catherine, his dream girl, who, to his surprise, lives in the same building. Trying to strike up a conversation, the next day, Neil heads to the school where he works as a teacher. There, he meets his friend Ray, from whom he borrows some money because, well, Neil's wallet was running dry. Meanwhile, somewhere across the galaxy, a council of weird, crooked-looking aliens is debating whether they should destroy Earth or spare humanity. After some argument, they decide to test humanity first, by giving one random human the power to do absolutely anything. And by chance, that lucky human turns out to be none other than our clumsy teacher, Neil, who, at that moment, had just fallen off his bicycle. The aliens decide to observe him for the next 10 days. If he uses his power for good, they'll let Earth live. If not, goodbye humanity. Back on Earth, Neil's day isn't going great. His principal dislikes him as much as some people hate the subscribe button, meaning not at all. You should love it, by the way. When Neil enters his classroom, it's complete chaos, more like a fish market than a school. Tired and frustrated, he mutters to himself that maybe if the school blew up tomorrow, might as well happen today. And right then, boom! There's an explosion in his classroom. Everyone is gone. Shocked, Neil runs home, where his dog Dennis is waiting and barking angrily. Neil notices Dennis has made a mess on the floor. Annoyed, he says, "I wish this would clean itself up." And suddenly, it does. The mess magically moves and flushes itself away. Neil is stunned. To calm down, he pours himself a drink, but accidentally spills it. Out of frustration, he mutters, "I wish the drink would just go back into the bottle." And to his absolute shock, the liquid flows right back into the bottle. That's when he realizes he has real powers. Still trying to process it, he brushes his teeth, wondering if his toothbrush would magically move into his mouth. At that moment, he remembers the explosion at school and says, "I wish everyone who died in the blast were alive again." And it works. All the students come back to life, but there's a catch. Every single person who ever died in that explosion, even from the past, returns as walking zombies. And now, those zombies start heading straight for Neil's house, groaning and stumbling, ready to ask, "Hey, flute boy, why did you bring us back?" Then, when Neil was suddenly awakened from his sleep, he wished everything would go back to how it was before the explosion. The moment he made that wish, he found himself back at school, sitting right across from Ray. Neil thought maybe all of it had just been a dream. After finishing his lunch break with Ray, Neil returned to his classroom, only to see his mischievous students still creating chaos. Annoyed, he wished that these kids would turn into quiet, bookish, well-behaved students. The second he said it, all the kids transformed into little geniuses, Einstein's offspring practically. Seeing that, Neil was thrilled. It felt like he had hit the jackpot. Later, when he stepped out of class, he saw the principal talking with some other teachers. Neil thought, "I wish the principal would treat me nicely for once." And boom, the principal started dancing in front of him like a teacher trying to impress his boss. After that, Neil went to the cafeteria where he saw his friend Ray trying to get closer to a lady teacher named Miss Pring. So Neil waved his hand again and magically made Ray and Miss Pring a couple. With every wish, his confidence grew stronger and stronger. And I know what you're thinking. If he can do anything, why doesn't he just become the president? Well, he actually did. But after seeing the chaos and constant conflicts that came with the job, Neil used his powers to immediately return home. Once home, he started amusing himself by transforming into all sorts of weird and funny disguises. Then, from his bed, he peeked at his crush, Catherine, who lived nearby and was ironing her clothes. The scene was so mesmerizing that he dozed off peacefully. The next morning, he told Ray everything, that he could literally do anything. To prove it, he resurrected a dead plant, made a flower appear in his hand, and conjured up the tastiest sandwich ever. Seeing this, Ray was blown away. So he took Neil to a horse race, hoping they could win big money. But come on, instead of betting on horses, wouldn't it be easier to just wish for money directly? Anyway, while all this was happening, the alien's control device malfunctioned, temporarily cutting off Neil's powers. Meanwhile, Catherine was talking to her friend, saying she really liked Neil. Her friend teased her, "If you like him, then go for it." At the same time, Neil wished, "I wish Catherine would come to me right now." And just like that, Catherine showed up at his house. Neil assumed it was because of his powers, though in reality it wasn't. By the next morning, Neil's powers were back. He first changed the weather to his liking, then magically dressed himself as breakfast floated toward him. Feeling playful, he decided to make his dog Dennis talk like a human. With a snap, Dennis started speaking. Just then, Catherine showed up to apologize for last night. Neil was about to propose to her when suddenly Dennis blurted out, "No, master, you belong to me. I won't share you with anyone." Hearing that, Catherine was stunned. She thought there was some man inside the bathroom saying all this. Convinced Neil might be gay, she got angry and stormed off. Neil ran after her to explain, but on his way, he ran into Ray again. Ray looked panicked and said, "Bro, that teacher Miss Pring doesn't love me. She worships me now." But Neil didn't have time for this, so he turned Ray into a sausage and carried him along. He finally found Catherine in a store and tried to explain everything, but she refused to listen. So Neil turned the sausage back into Ray, just in case someone decided to eat him. Meanwhile, the aliens observing Neil were extremely disappointed. They saw that Neil hadn't used his powers for any truly good purpose yet. Later, when Catherine returned to her apartment, she found her ex-boyfriend Tony waiting there, trying to get back into her life. But before things could escalate, Neil showed up and invited Catherine to dinner at his place. During dinner, he decided to tell her the truth, that he had supernatural powers and could do absolutely anything. But Catherine didn't believe him. Not one bit. Catherine didn't believe a single word Neil said. Rolling her eyes, she quipped, "You really need to stop drinking that cheap stuff, Neil." But before he could respond, her ex-boyfriend Tony suddenly appeared at the window and pointed a gun straight at Neil. Neil, however, wasn't even remotely scared. In fact, he casually twisted Tony's wrist until it snapped, and then magically fixed it again. The gun fell to the floor, and Catherine, terrified, yelled, "You two fight all you want, I'm going to bed." She stormed out, leaving Neil and Tony face to face. Neil, irritated now, decided to have a little fun. Every time he waved his hand, his wishes came true, tossing Tony around like a rag doll. But eventually, Tony caught him off guard and knocked him unconscious. Let's be honest, Neil's the first man who actually gets stronger by waving his hand. When Neil woke up, he found himself kidnapped by Tony, who wanted to use Neil's powers for his own greedy desires. Tony even held Dennis, Neil's loyal dog, at gunpoint to force him to obey. Meanwhile, Catherine, worried about Neil, went looking for him. Instead, she found Ray, who was hiding from Miss Pring, the obsessive teacher who now worshipped him like a god. Together, Catherine and Ray figured out that Neil hadn't shown up at school either, meaning something was definitely wrong. They tracked him down to Tony's apartment where they managed to rescue him. Once free, Neil reversed a few of his past wishes, which also freed Ray from Miss Pring's unwanted devotion. But Catherine and Ray were still furious with him and decided to leave. Heartbroken, Neil went after Catherine, but she snapped at him saying, "I can't be with someone who can do anything he wants." "What's next? You'll pull down the moon and stars for me?" Disappointed and dejected, Neil returned home to Dennis. Heartbroken, Neil went after Catherine, but she snapped at him saying, "I can't be with someone who can do anything he wants." "What's next? You'll pull down the moon and stars for me?" Or, disappointed and dejected, Neil returned home to Dennis. There, he decided maybe it was time to use his powers for good. Together, Neil and Dennis came up with a few noble wishes: that everyone in the world would have enough food, that all countries would stop fighting, and that global warming would end. Sounds amazing, right? Well, not quite. When Neil turned on the TV, chaos had erupted across the globe. People were literally swelling up like balloons because they now had unlimited food. Nations were fighting for no reason at all. And since global warming had stopped completely, an ice age was now beginning. Horrified, Neil quickly took back all his wishes. Feeling hopeless, he sat by the water with Dennis. "I couldn't fix my life or the world," he sighed. "Maybe it's better if I just end this." He tied biscuits to his body as weights and jumped into the water. But Dennis, being the loyal dog he was, jumped in right after him. Even though he couldn't swim, Neil ended up saving him instead. As they sat exhausted by the shore, Dennis spoke up. "Master, you should give me your powers. I'm loyal, and I'll never make selfish choices." Neil hesitated but eventually agreed, transferring all his powers to Dennis. Meanwhile, the aliens monitoring Neil were shocked. "He gave the power to a dog?" they yelled. "That's it! We're destroying Earth right now!" But just as they launched their final attack, Dennis made a wish. "I wish the place where this power came from would no longer exist." Instantly, the aliens' entire base imploded. Their attack backfired and destroyed them instead. One alien dog even ended up destroying the rest of his own crew by accident. The next day, Neil told Catherine everything, that he'd given up his powers for good. Moved by his sincerity, Catherine finally forgave him and agreed to marry him. And that's how their story ends. So friends, maybe this movie doesn't give you a deep, life-changing moral, but it does teach a hilarious truth. If you ever get godlike powers, the very first thing you should do is get rid of the one who gave them to you before they change their mind and take them back. But jokes apart, what did you learn from this movie? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. I'm really curious to know your take. And hey, if you enjoyed this crazy story, don't forget to hit that like button. Let's aim for 1,000 likes on this one. Also, make sure you share it with your friends and subscribe if you love such fun and thought-provoking movie breakdowns. I'll catch you all in the next video with another wild story. Until then, stay awesome, stay curious, and Jai Hind.